Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this is the video I promised you guys in the last video I did, kind of talking about some more details of things that happened in that 2.5 month time frame that I didn't upload any videos. So I alluded to the fact that we had some ER visits since, like, in the past 2.5 months. It's just crazy that we've been to the ER twice. And it was with Ebenezer. Now, some of you may know I have a previous video when Ebenezer was about 10 months old, and we took him to the ER for breathing issues. He was having rapid labored breathing, and basically the same thing. They did give us an inhaler, an albuterol inhaler for him with like a spacer and kind of an adapter for a young child to be able to use an inhaler. And he ended up getting sick, like a cold, and then was like coughing a lot, and then he started having that kind of wheezing, and I was like, okay, like, here we go, we have this inhaler, let's do it. And it helped for maybe like 20 minutes, and then it kind of came back, and then we're like, and we kind of waited for a little while because we definitely, no one wants to have to go to the ER. And then we ended up, you can give that inhaler every 4 hours, and so we ended up waiting and then giving him another one, and then he ended up helping a little bit, but then it was getting to the point then where it was like, okay, this isn't getting better with what they gave us, and we've got to go. So I took him to the ER, and he ended up having to stay 2 nights, and I actually have few little pictures I'll kind of put up here, but kind of show you what it looks like when a kid has breathing issues. They call it reactive airway disease. They actually try not to diagnose kids with asthma at this young age. I say usually like 4, maybe 5, maybe 6, maybe it depends on the doctor, where they would diagnose them with asthma. But they did say that kids that have eczema as a young baby, it's highly correlated for them to have asthma as well. So, even though he hasn't been fully diagnosed, it definitely seems like that, and it seems like it's triggered by when he has some kind of drainage, congestion, coughing, so like a cold. And in the time we went, they test him for COVID, they test him for RSV, and it's not any of those things. So I think it really is just kind of like a common cold thing that then triggers his airways just to get inflamed and swell, and then he can't breathe, and it's really this upper airway part. It's not like the lungs, but it's the upper airway part. So that happened, and then he had to stay in the hospital for 2 nights, which is a bummer. And that's actually what he had to do the first time too. When he was 10 months old, he had to stay 2 nights. So then a month and a half later only, he got another cold. And kids are always, I feel like, having like runny noses and all this stuff. So, but for him, it can just trigger this, and which we were very shocked that this was happening again. And we kind of did the same thing where we had the inhaler that they gave us. We did everything we could do, to try to prevent from going to the ER, but it got to that point again where it was like nothing's helping, and he's really struggling, breathing fast. And it didn't actually sound raspy this time really, but like wheezing, but he was breathing fast. So we ended up taking him to the ER this time. Thankfully, Casey's parents are actually here visiting us right now, and they were here. So Casey and I both could go because they allow 2 visitors in the hospital. And so Casey and I both were able to take him, which was huge to not be there by myself. So, because in the past we actually had only one of us could be there, but we were able to switch. And so I was with him one night, and then Casey was with him the other night. But this time we were both able to go, and we were really hoping, actually even they were kind of leaning towards he might be able to go home that same night and not have to stay in the hospital. But it got to the point, and it was like 12:30 in the morning, and at this point he had not slept at all. He thankfully took a nap earlier that day, but he hadn't gone to sleep, and where normally his bedtime is around 8, he hadn't been asleep. So I think some of maybe the breathing treatments, the steroids, I don't know if that kind of keeps him awake, but also there's like bright lights in the room that you're in, so it's like not conducive for sleeping. But anyway, at like 12:30 at night, you know, this one guy was like, yeah, I think you guys are going to be able to get out of here in about 20 minutes and go home. And then someone else came in and they were like, they lifted his shirt up and kind of were watching him breathe. And even though he was doing much better at this point, but she was like, his breathing is still too fast and too hard, like too, you could just see that he was working harder than he should. And so they're like, we're gonna have to keep him overnight. So we did have to stay one night in the hospital again. This time actually Casey usually sleeps much better in the hospital than I do. So he actually stayed with him and I went home. I didn't get home till about 1:30. So then the next day I went back to the hospital. I, you know, hung out and, you know, with Casey's parents and other boys, helped taking care of them. But then as soon as they went down for their nap, actually, I went back to the hospital because it was going to be a long day in the hospital, because kind of what they do for kids with these breathing issues is they have to meet this certain criteria before they can go home. And so they did like several breathing treatments when we first went to the ER that night. And one was like an hour long, one was like 5 minutes long. And then after they have the treatment, they have to wait and like monitor him for, I don't know exactly the time frame, but it seemed like at least an hour and a half, where they wait before they do anything else, just to kind of see how he responds. And then after that, they were just doing basically the same inhaler that we have, but they were doing more puffs of it. We call it puffs. I don't know what you call it exactly with the inhaler. But, you know, normally for us, it says we can do 2 puffs every 4 hours, but they were doing 4 puffs every 2 hours. And then they were spreading it to every 3 hours. And then they were like, okay, before he can come home, he has to have dosage spread across 4 hours twice. So that's 8 hours. So he was there the whole day the next day. And we actually did, I was kind of scared we might have to stay another night, because those past 2 times we went, we stayed 2 nights. But they did finally let us go at like 8:20, which I was really surprised, because I knew 8 o'clock was that time where we were going to be able to complete those 2 4-hour spread apart treatments. And thankfully it wasn't too long after that, because I was like, oh man, I know how the paperwork goes and blah blah blah, and sometimes it takes him forever to come in, and we probably, even though he might be ready at 8, we probably won't leave till 9 10. But thankfully we were able to be home about 8:45, and the boys usually go down at 8:15, something like that. And but thankfully, and I actually asked them to keep the other boys awake, Casey's parents, because I just didn't want to have to do the whole thing where 2 are already down, settled down, asleep, and then another one comes in the room and potentially wakes them up. So they usually like to talk for a little bit when they're going to sleep, and I didn't know if he would try to talk to his brothers, you know, and wake them up. So we were able to put them all down to bed together, and they slept great. And he's doing a lot better. You know, this was only like 5 days ago, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but you know, he's been doing really well. And this cold, this drainage, is still, we're just trying to really stay on top of it. It's gotten a lot better, but you know, where we suck the snot out of his nose, we, you know, make sure to give him the treatments. We have to still give him some treatments after coming home, and also giving him some like kind of herbal cough stuff, because at this age they can't take like real cough medicine. So yeah, just, and fluids, like trying to make sure we give him plenty of water. But yeah, so that's kind of what's been going on, and it is tough. And I don't know if any of you have experienced that, where you've had to go to the ER with your child for breathing issues. And you know, they kind of said that some kids can eventually grow out of it, but some kids, they don't. It's just kind of like what happens for them for the rest of their life, is they just have asthma. So who knows, you know, what that will be for him. But I am super thankful that our hospital is close, and that they are really good with kid stuff, and that we have, you know, medication that can help at home. And they actually told us that, you know, if things kind of get bad again, that we don't technically have to wait that 4 hours. You know, if it comes back and it's bad, we can like give it to him sooner, you know, no sooner than 2 hours apart. But then they said, if you're like continually giving it to him every 2 hours and it's not getting better, then that's indication that you got to come back to the ER. So, but yeah, that's where we are with him. And when we're actually going to see their pediatrician in July, and it's June right now. But we're going to talk more specifically about, you know, even some different things that, you know, maybe even seeing like a lung specialist. One of the doctors suggested like a pediatric lung specialist. So anyway, our poor boy Eben has a sensitive body, and, you know, starting with eczema and then now this reactive airway disease, basically is what they call it right now, but potentially asthma. And we just have to, you know, keep an eye on it. And, you know, especially if he gets a cold or sick, and, you know, not that we don't want him to get sick, because, you know, not that we want to purposely expose him to getting a cold, but we know that getting sick is part of his immune system growing. So, you know, all of that to kind of, but making sure that we're staying on top of it. But it's just kind of like, I wanted to put it on here, not just to like, you know, make it extreme or whatever, but just to like, let those of you out there who may have a child like this, that you're not alone. And, you know, sometimes having multiples, you really kind of hope that you don't have many complications, just because you already have multiples, you have triplets. And we really are super thankful for the fact that we do have hardly any, you know, major issues with our kids, and it's amazing. And no, that's not always the case, and especially when kids are born premature and all this stuff. You know, and thankfully our boys weren't that premature. They were born at 34 weeks. But we know we are super graced, I like to use that word, and that, you know, we don't have major issues with our kids. And, you know, this is, you know, Eben does have these health issues that we have to be aware of and be on, you know, watch out for. But, you know, there are ways that can help it. And yeah, so that's kind of what happened during that time, and going to the ER twice. And but yeah, just wanted to update you guys on that, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.
And then I did the sweet potatoes, and they ate all of that. Like,
Pink.
they ate really well for breakfast, actually.
Orange. Blue. Green.
Yeah, me too.
Blue.
Oops.
Your brother's back home.
Hi.
You guys can come say hi. He's home. Yeah, there's your. Oh. Yeah, there's your brother. Oh. Yeah, you want to show them what's on your hand? You don't have a socket on your hand anymore. You have a band-aid. Yeah. And you have the thing on your foot that they would scan and go beep. That was your favorite part about being in the hospital, probably. Yeah. You want to give your brothers hugs? There's Aunt Wally. Hi.
Oh, wow.